This is something we haven't done before for the Real Estate Video Blueprint audience and community, but I don't think anyone's really shown kind of how to create a campaign from the ground up. So we don't know how this is going to go. This could be a train wreck or it could be some magic, but we are going to find out. When they get the postcard or they get the mailer, what do you want them to feel when they get that? Like, what's the thoughts and feelings you want them to have? What's the goal you want them to achieve?
Having an additional mailer or an additional social campaign or an additional video, I think is something that's a little bit more compelling than just like, hey, do you want to know what your home is worth? The conversations and the hand raises and people saying, yeah, I do want a home equity review or I do want to know what my value is would be the win.
Well, first off, it's great to see you, Katie. And this is something that you're right. This is something we haven't done before for the Real Estate Video Blueprint audience and community. And I think it's going to be really cool because I think they've probably listened to 1,000 podcasts where people talk about, here's ideas and strategies. They've heard me talk about this, you talk about it, Tim talk about it, but I don't think anyone's really shown kind of how to create a campaign from the ground up. So we don't know how this is going to go. This could be a train wreck or it could be some magic, but we are going to find out. So Katie, let me start by asking you a few questions because I think it's going to be helpful to understand what kind of the goal of the campaign that we're going to create today. What was the kind of thought process you had around like what's the goal you wanted to achieve? And then how were you thinking about getting to that goal?
Yeah. So I think, the biggest thing is like we're trying to create conversations with potential sellers and build that database, right, of people that are homeowners that potentially want to move. And so one of the things that we've been working on is like in all of our direct mail campaigns to our farm, there's always some sort of component of like, hey, you want to know what your home's worth? Or hey, you want to know your home's value? What could your home sell for? Whatever. Having an additional mailer or an additional social campaign or an additional video that is like, home values have increased this percentage over the past 5 years or 10 years. I think is something that's a little bit more compelling than just like, hey, do you want to know what your home is worth? Because I think most people, like if I were to ask you, hey, do you want to know what your home is worth? The first thing that you would say to me is you'd be like, oh, well, I don't want to sell. Like I'm not looking to sell. I just
creates a brick wall.
Yeah. So I think that could potentially create a little bit more curiosity.
Let's just start with the end in mind. Let's define what success looks like. So are we saying to ourselves, hey, listen, if I can get 10 seller leads that are calling me off of this postcard, that's a huge win? Is it I want to get 5 listing appointments? Like, let's try to just maybe drill down a little bit further as it relates to where do we want this thing to end? When it's all said and done, we're popping the champagne. That was a huge success. What does that look like for you?
Yeah. I mean, I think that obviously I would love the listings, right? But I think that the conversations and the hand raises and people saying, yeah, I do want a home equity review or I do want to know what my value is would be the win, right? Because then they go into our database. We give them a range. Hopefully then we get a listing appointment out of it. But like the hand raise is the biggest thing, I think, for me.
Let's talk about the angle here. You want to highlight the fact that their home value has increased over the last few years as part of like giving them some context. Hey, your home's increased. We want to maybe create some curiosity. What do you when they get the postcard or they get the mailer, what do you want them to feel when they get that? Like what's the thoughts and feelings you want them to have?
Yeah, I mean, I think the curiosity is huge.
Okay.
Or, I guess if we're showing like, hey, this is how much it's increased over X amount of years, the idea would be, oh man, like I've lived in my house for that long. Do you think our value has gone up that much too, kind of thing?
What do you use to build your list to farm?
So we have a list that we've been mailing for probably 4 years of about almost 2,000 homes in a specific zip code where like I used to live and now I live across the highway from. It's not necessarily like a likely to move list or anything like that. It's just like a specific set of homes from a zip code.
The thought that went through my mind as soon as you're talking was, what is the average length of home ownership ballpark? Meaning how often are people turning over in the farm that you sell? Is it 7 years, 15 years? Is it somewhere in between?
Yeah, I would say that the 5 to 7 mark.
What I heard you say is I don't want this thing to be a generic, hey, find out what your home is worth.
Yeah.
Because every other agent's doing that. Not compelling. You're like, hey, I want to make it more compelling. So why don't we talk about the trends that have been happening? Well, let's go one step further. What if we said, if you think about this idea, if we took that 2,000 people you farm to and we were to break it up into maybe not one big list, but let's say 5 smaller lists based on the year that they bought the house. So we'd say, if you purchase your house in 2017, you might be surprised to learn that your home value has increased X percentage. Now,
Mhm.
imagine I got the letter. I bought my house in 2013. All of a sudden, this letter is 10x more relevant to me than if it was just, hey, like what's going. And by the way, you can imagine we can just make some small adjustments to each of those segments. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So we can say, hey, of the 2000, we're going to want to hit 3 or 4 kind of segments. What is the turnover rate within that area today? Like if you when you look at the data of those 2000 homes, how many of those homes are selling every year?
Turnover, it says, is 2.98% for
Which is not bad.
2,383 homes, almost 2,400 homes.
So
I tried to,
2,400 homes.
yeah, narrow it down a little bit.
Yeah, and it's two point what was it 2.9%?
2.98. Yeah.
So damn near 3%. We'll round up. 2,400. We're marketers. We're gonna round up
Fudge the numbers a little
3%.
bit. It's a realtor thing.
And by the way, that probably I would imagine. Are you looking back at 23 or are you looking at 24 year to date?
So I'm basically just pulling this from a like farming system
Yep,
of like
got
looking
it.
at homes 1990 or newer. So it pulled
Got it.
2,300.
One thing that would be really interesting. That's great, by the way. That's great. One thing that'd be really interesting is as a kind of a filler line there, Vlad, is Katie afterwards. You won't be able to do this live with us, but what's the percentage increase? Meaning that like it's so a stat without context is hard for people to conceptualize. Hey, what's the stock market at right now? What's the S&P at right now? S&P right now is at what? It's at the market cap here. It's at 5,500. Okay. So the when you look at the 5 year max, right? The S&P was at 2,300 and 2020, and now it's up to 5,500. So the S&P is up essentially 100% in the last 3 years. So saying the S&P was at 5,400, that's hard for people to understand. Saying the S&P is up 100% in the last 3 years, double in the last 3 years, that's easier for people to understand. Oh, it's heading in this different direction. The same thing is true for turnover rate. What was the turnover rate in 23? My bet, probably a little bit lower than it is in 24.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
would be my guess. So the reason, so let me land the plane. What I would say is, as I'm thinking out loud here, is I'm like, hey, which is the reason, like, so we had this line. So you bought your house in 2017, and you're probably thinking, like most people, how much equity have I gained? Right? How much equity have I gained? Question mark. I've done the research, and homes like yours have increased in value. So I like the idea of I've done the research. I've done the research, and homes like yours have increased 117% just in the last 7 years. This is likely the reason why 36 people have decided to sell their house in the last few months. To provide some perspective or context, that's up 50% from last
Over.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you kind of like you now like oh, it turns out like a lot of people are selling now more than they were a year ago. To an extent. And I'm just kind of like and this is kind of one thing that I always do as a professional marketer is I have a swipe file of ads, swipe file of email. So I'm thinking about this idea of we create this guide here, Katie, and it's a little bit like different ways, 21 different ways to talk about like what's your home value.
Mhm.
That's not saying like find out what your home value is worth. So we're just kind of looking at like what are different ways or different phrases that we can use. Vladimir, I really like this direction already. Um, you've got my attention. So you purchased your home in 2017. You're wondering how much equity you've gained. This is going to surprise you. First off, does this look like anything anyone else has ever sent to those people in the farm?
I would say probably not.
What if you were to do a CMA for somebody in that farm proactively? Okay. So pick one person, do a CMA for them, send it to them. Be like just one person. That's all we got to do. Because then we can turn the corner as part of our mass marketing campaign. We could say, in fact, I just did, right? So let me just make some notes here for a second because I want to lose this train of thought. 2007, up, Y. Okay. In fact, what if we were to do something where it's like, in fact, I just did a professional home value report for one of your neighbors. They bought the house for what would be a price they bought the house for in 2017, would you say?
2017 would be like low 300s, 310,
Okay, so let's say
320.
310,000. And then that same property today, let's say they bought for 310, that farm that you know well, ballpark, how much is that home worth today?
Probably 450-ish. Four.
Okay. So that means they bought the house. Yeah, so they've gained $140,000 in equity. Okay. So $140,000 in equity. So as a percentage, $140,000. Yeah. So $140,000 in equity. Yep. Okay. Here's the rough flow. The rough flow is so you bought your house in 2007, and like most people, you're probably wondering how much equity have I gained? Have I gained? Question mark. I've done the research. I've done the research. Homes like yours have increased in value by, looks like, call it 50% or 53% on average, which is why 32 people have sold their home, which is likely the reason why 30 people have sold in the last few months. In fact, I just did a professional home value report for one of your neighbors, and they've actually gained $140,000 in equity since they bought their property. What I've just done with that one line there is I've just created like I've demonstrated that I know your market. Now you could say something along the lines of they were surprised, they loved it, something along those lines. And now you can transition into is the reason I'm reaching out is because I'm offering this same report for everyone who lives in the area. If you like a if you'd like a professional home value report for your home, text me at phone my number. So this section here is going to be cleaned up. There's no question about that. But you're seeing how this thing's kind of starting to take shape. Let me get into ChatGPT. Now we've got the raw bone. So again, if everyone's following, I'm going to recap before we move forward here, which is up until this point, we established at the very beginning of this sort of process, Katie's got a farm of 2,000 people. We want to try to get like a 1% response rate. We want to get 20 people to raise their hand. If 20 people raise their hand, 10 of them will lead to appointments. Of the 10 lead to appointments, probably 5 of them will become listings. Okay, that's a pretty clear and straightforward goal. The angle that we wanted to use is that this area has kind of gone up 50% or more in the last 7-8 years. Cool. Now we're starting to say we want to spark their curiosity. We want to demonstrate our local expertise, and we want to create an irresistible offer that gets them to like not just throw our stuff away. So this is kind of how I use ChatGPT. This may be, people may get this, they may not get this, but this is how I use it. The first thing is grade this letter based on my AEA formula framework. So my AEA framework, if you were at Summit, you heard me coach this, is attention, emotion, action. And so ChatGPT will now kind of like look at this campaign through that lens, and it'll give us a score. Okay, so it's giving us an A minus for that. Emotion, totally get it. It's not very emotional connection. And action's giving us a B plus. Now, here's the thing, is that I would say be more critical than that. So ChatGPT is afraid to hurt your feelings, and they will almost always give you a higher score than you deserve. So I need them to be more critical, and I always have them become more. And so now they're like, all right, hey, your attention C, it's relevant. It feels generic. It could have a little bit of punch behind it. Your emotion. Okay, now they're being more realistic. This has got the bones of something, but it could be a lot better. Uploaded the raw copy. I've had them grade it on my own framework. Rewrite your version to improve the score. And one thing I like to do, because I always kind of find clever lines here, because I've given it context. It kind of understands the context of the letter. It's now graded it. It now understands kind of what I'm trying to do. Now at this point, I'm going to say, like, let's incorporate pattern interrupt into letter. And the reason why I almost always use this is because it avoids creating kind of that hallmark style copy that you see ChatGPT always kick out. Use unconventional flow and pattern interrupt. And let's see if it creates any magic for us that we might want to use. And again, I'm looking through the lens of, can I grab one line from this that fits into it?
Yeah.
So right out of the gates, imagine finding out your home's value has increased $145,000. That's exactly what happened to one of your neighbors. Okay, hold on. That's better than mine. Okay. Like that's actually a better hook than mine. Okay, cool. Here's the kicker. They bought the house the same year you did. You see how all of a sudden the ChatGPT is not kicking out like just shit. It's starting to sound like a pro wrote this thing. And so now let me just copy this real quick. And I'm going to go ahead and throw this back into our doc. So bear with me here a second. When you read that, does that feel like I've got your attention? You're kind of bringing me into this.
I like the first two, the imagine finding out and here's the kicker, or like, and here's whatever. I
Yep.
don't know if I like kicker, but that's fine. I feel like then the next two paragraph, like most people think the gold standard, and then like you see, like I feel like that's a little verbose.
This is the thing about using AI. It's like a marketer. AI will not replace a marketer. A marketer who knows how to use AI will replace a marketer who doesn't. This is the process that you have to follow as a creative, is you kind of like you're cutting, you're pasting, you're reordering, you're kind of going through the process of all of this. And let's jump back over to the postcard itself.
Ooh, look at that
So
117. It's
now
just
all the,
glowing.
and by the way, a couple pro tips. Thank you, Vladimir. Yeah,
Yeah,
so let's
yeah.
grab so everyone can see this. This is what Katie's currently sending out right now. And by the way, this is important. I'm not trashing it. Okay, I'm obviously joking, but like this is like you have a great brand. You got beautiful brand colors. They're just not reflected in the marketing campaigns you have now. And so it's so common to see this be like, hey, let's get something out there, let's get it out there. And like it's a lot for people. And so we have this like scan here for your free report. Now, here's the thing. I'm going for a text message. I'm not going for a scan or something
Yeah,
like this. Okay. I'm
understood.
going for a text, right? I'm not going for a scan. And so, Vladimir, if you want to add the copy to that, people will be able to kind of see this transformation. From your perspective, like, was it helpful to kind of get this behind the scenes look at how the stuff works?
Significantly. Yeah.
Cool. Wasn't it so much better not having Tim here interrupting us every 3 minutes?
He'd be like, for me, this is what I would do. So,
We love you, Tim. Yes, but this is to me like this is. I hope this helps people understand like marketing should be fun. We should really push ourselves to do something that are creative and are interesting and are different and are unique. Let me give everyone a huge, huge disclaimer. If you're batting 300 with marketing, you're hitting the Hall of Fame. We may send this to 2,000 people, and we may get one person to text us back. Okay, maybe they like the crime scene tape here. Maybe that's their jam. Okay. The thing about marketing is like it's the speed in which you execute, and it is the frequency in which you produce that matter. And so I want to show people like once you get I can do this fairly quickly with the help of a super talented designer because I've done it 1,000 times. As you start to get in this habit, it becomes so much easier to be able to produce these campaigns. So Katie and I will certainly keep you posted. Katie, this is your podcast, so I'll let you end it. But I thought this was really helpful. I'm excited to see how this campaign plays out, and I'm hopeful we can get some listings, my friend.